wonderful to have you here on the House of Growth. How are you doing today?
I'm feeling very growthy. Now I'm happy to be here and to connect.
Wonderful, yeah, me too. And you and I have had a couple of chats and exchanged a little bit on Instagram. But just for the purposes of anyone listening, why don't you give us a little bit of info on what you do?
Yeah. So my name's Jacko. Nickname is Jacko. Full name David Mark Jackson, actually, if you want my middle name as well. I was a former professional rugby player, so I had a brain injury back in 2013, which ended my rugby career. I had a seizure on the field and a small bleed on the brain, and that sort of shut down everything. That put everything on hold. Initially, it's crazy to even think it now, that I was trying to get back to playing initially, but days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, and I wasn't getting any better. And it was about 6 months after the injury. It was the Christmas time. I was forced into the retirement and had to take a new path. I was lucky in that I've made a good recovery. I was able to get back to running after about a year, and not have my symptoms come back. And I've retrained as a strength and conditioning coach. Worked a lot with Paralympic athletes before. Over the last 3 years, I've come across the oxygen advantage and the importance of breathing, this thing that sort of goes on automatically in the background that I had no idea of, that I was doing it so badly. I came across it from looking at some research into, or two bits of research. One was the effect of brain injuries on gut health and the brain-gut axis, because I'd had an ulcer on my tongue from the day I had the injury. So I probably bit my tongue whilst I was having the seizure, but that ulcer didn't go away for like 3 years, like the same ulcer for like 3 years. It was just like, what's going on? Like, what's going on here? And so that was some stuff around, brain injuries affecting your gut health, and then that can, you can have skin issues and what have you, and ulcers and things. And then the other bit around what other things the brain injuries potentially do to us that we're not aware of, and it was affecting your breathing patterns and affecting how well you breathe, and your brain's chemosensitivity to carbon dioxide. So this was quite new to me, and a bit of an eye opener. And when I came across one of the first concepts within the oxygen advantage, was that the reason you breathe isn't because oxygen gets low and you get triggered to breathe, which is just how you typically would I'd never really thought about it before. Like, why do you breathe? You've got to breathe because of oxygen. And this notion that it's actually the chemoreceptors in your brainstem that monitor and dictate your breathing are far more sensitive to changes in carbon dioxide than they are oxygen. And it's actually the carbon dioxide levels rising within the body that is our stimulus to breathe. We have to breathe to get that out, because it helps balance the pH of the blood. These are some of the things we can necessarily go into. But that was like we breathe because of carbon dioxide, not oxygen. I was like, this is interesting. And then it was like, I did some of the assessments on myself, thinking that maybe my brain injury had affected my breathing. And it was some of the assessments that I'd done. Very simple things. One's like a very simple breath hold time without any willpower. It's called the Bolt score in the oxygen advantage, or in Buteyko they call it the control pause. But effectively, you hold your breath and wait till your brain sends a signal for you to breathe in. And mine was like 9 seconds, which put you in a category as a severe asthmatic. And I was like, well, I've never had asthma before in my life. I mean, at this point, I'd got back to running. I mean, this was like 3 years ago. I was running like a reasonable sort of 20-minute 5K. I was like back to feeling like quite fit, but always felt like the handbrake was slightly on. That's the best way I can describe it. That just something wasn't quite right. And breathing ticked that box of something's not quite right. Something in the background that I'm not aware of, that's constantly influencing how I feel and influencing other, factors going on within my body. And as I say to people all the time, like, when you go in and have a look into Pandora's box of like breathing and the importance of it, and then how it affects like your nervous system, how it affects how you sleep, how it affects how you think, how it affects how you feel, it's very difficult to then dismiss it and go, oh, actually, breathing isn't really important. I'm just going to forget about that now, because, you know, as simple as if you're not breathing, you're going to die unless you can hold your breath for, you know, a significant amount of time. But even like a free diver might hold, I think the world record will be something crazy, but like someone hold their breath for 5 minutes is a long time. It's not a long time in life. Like I want to live till I'm like 100 or more. So we've got to breathe well.
Yeah. And I love that story that you tell of, you know, kind of starting with an injury and then you doing your own research and trying to get back to full fitness and health, and discovering all of these different things that you're just like, wow, hang on a minute, I should dig a bit deeper on this. This seems pretty important. This seems pretty important.
Yeah.
Ultimately leading to where you are now, which is dedicating a lot of your time to try and help people improve their lives through breathing. A lot of people that I speak to, clients, friends, and even myself, do a lot of breath work these days, whether it's sort of pranayama stuff from yoga or Wim Hof methods becoming a bit more popular. And quite a few people I speak to are even beginning to read James Nestor's book, Breathe, which dives much deeper into this topic. But I still think there's a lot of people out there, vast majority of people, see breath work as this kind of fringe thing that we kind of have to set aside some time to do, or bolt it onto a yoga class, or make it some sort of practice like a meditation or something we have to dedicate a lot of time to. And one of the things that I was really interested when you and I first spoke, and you know, my own intuitions from reading James Nestor's book is that, and speaking to other breathwork instructors, frankly, is that and frankly, I think this is the same for meditation and other things as well. It's about bringing these practices into our daily life. And you said a moment ago about sleep and the nervous system and everything else. And I'd love for you to give us a quick insight in what you have uncovered breathing as, or what is relevant to breathing or breath work of any kind on you know, sleep and nervous system and other areas of our life, and what the benefits can be to being more conscious around our breathing.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, actually. Like, just this one quote you've asked the question, really, because the rest of the podcast could be just answering this question in its various different parts. I think
no one needs to hear anything else from me. You just
I'm just going to try and order in some sort of rational way in my brain, rather than just going off on too many different tangents. But something that, so like I've gone, like, you know, I've gone down this rabbit hole, so to speak, but I feel like it is so important because there's a few things I can't deny. Everyone has to breathe, and therefore it's for everybody. And if there's just because something's automatic doesn't mean it's optimal, or doesn't mean you're doing it well, or doesn't mean it's efficient. I'll say it again, just because it's automatic doesn't mean it's optimal. So if I'm breathing inefficiently, it means I've got to do it more. I'm going to waste energy and waste stress on the act of being alive, which is just breathing. So if we can understand the process of breathing and what it's there to do, and then how it influences the nervous system, things that we can go into, then we can actually start to learn, how can I use my breathing to influence my nervous system? But really importantly, from a base level, how can I understand the process of breathing so that I can ensure that I can make it efficient? In that, just because it's automatic doesn't mean you can't choose to do something with it. It's the beautiful thing about breathing. It's so important. It is automatic and has this automatic function, but it's the one thing within your body that influences other autonomic functions that you can choose something to do. Yeah. When in life, you have to be breathing, and in breathing, you're either breathing out, breathing in, or holding your breath. There's those three things. There's nothing else. And that can sound a bit sort of obvious, but also to me, it's a bit like, wow, like, that shit's true. Like, there is nothing else. There's other stuff going on as well as those things. So my mind is racing. I'm stressed. I'm worried about this thing. I'm doing this. I'm shouting at the dog. I don't know, whatever the things are that's stressing you out in your life. You're all doing one of those three things, and you can choose to speed up or slow down, or do a bigger or smaller inhale. You can change your exhale. You can choose to pause at the top or the bottom of the breath. Those are things that you can choose to do, and those are things that, when we understand the science now of it, that will influence how you feel, how your body utilizes oxygen, how your nervous system balances. And that's, I guess, for me, unveiling that has taken me down that rabbit hole, because it's so simple, or can be so simple. We don't have to overcomplicate it, and it's so powerful. So, you know, I'm now as a master instructor with the Oxygen Advantage, not only teach people and help people in that respect, I'll also train other people to become certified with the Oxygen Advantage, so they can go out and do their good work. Because yeah, as I said, I feel it's so important, and everyone has to do it. And there's some really alarming figures. If you think that, who's likely to be breathing well? People that exercise, so an athletic population, or people that don't exercise? Well, people that exercise are going to be fitter, they're going to be breathing better. Recent study in the strength and conditioning, like I think it was European Strength and Conditioning Journal, was 91% of the athletic population dysfunctional breathers. 91%. Like it's almost like if you do exercise, you're more likely to be a dysfunctional breather. In that, I think one of the things that's that I think about is that breathing at rest. Like, how did I didn't know any of this stuff, so I look at breathing and I go, oh, maybe that's something I'm not doing right. And then your next question is like, well, how do you do it right? And then you're like, I don't know. And you like find out, okay, I'm supposed to be breathing through the nose rather than the mouth. Okay, well, that's an easy one. I'm just going to shut my mouth. Like that's the am I breathing through my nose or not? You know if you're doing it. Now, does your nose feel really restricted and horrible to breathe through? Well, that would be a sign that you haven't been using it. And so then there's some things that you can do to help improve the airway and the airflow, tongue position, and actually like, you know, sticking stuff up in there, or some of the breath holding can help to clear it. But then you go into things like, how fast am I supposed to breathe? Or where am I supposed to breathe from? And you come across the diaphragmatic breathing, and you go, well, how do I know if I'm diaphragmatic breathing or not? Like, how do I know if I'm doing it right? They were some of the like very, very basic questions that I had, and I didn't feel were being answered easy. I didn't find the answers to those things easy. Like, am I actually doing it right? Like, you just think I'm breathing. And that's where learning how to do it well in some isolated practice is useful as you're trying to learn anything new. If I want to try and play the guitar and I've never played the guitar before, it's probably not going to be great for me to join a band and try to learn whilst everyone else can do the thing that they're already doing. I need to sit and I need to learn on my own, and then I can maybe then do something with it. So a little bit in isolation, but so you can then go and do it in everyday life. And that for me is where, like, learning to breathe well and then taking it into your everyday life and your everyday activities is where the gold really is. And a big thing from me, or a phrase I'll often say, is like making breathwork normal. So you mentioned a few like practices that people may do. We can do a practice, but reality is, if I spend 30 minutes breathing and then go off for my day and spend the next 23 and a half hours breathing poorly, which one is the brain going to respond most to? The brain responds to 1 minute of bad breathing, like negatively. There's chemoreceptors in your brain that are constantly measuring and monitoring the pH of the blood and the carbon dioxide levels that are affecting that. And so how you breathe during the day when you're not doing your exercise or your breathing practice is actually probably the most important thing. And you gave a really good example of mindfulness, right? Almost like, so if I do like a 20-minute meditation in the morning and I get into a really zen place and feel really good and I'm happy with myself and the world and whatever, like good vibes are going on, and then I act like a dickhead for the rest of the day, it's like, what's the point in doing the meditation in the morning? So I think of I've not really, you've given me that analogy, but and I've not really thought about it that way, but it's the same thing. Like I need to be able to breathe well. And for me, if I have some isolated practice of breathing, or I recommend some to a client, it's only to help them get better awareness of the breathing and doing it well there, so that they can go and breathe better, whatever it is that they're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. And I'd love to come on to the specifics of, you know, what people can be doing on a day-to-day basis to improve their breathing, and specifically what that looks like. We'll come on to that in a bit, but I'm really curious to hear a little bit more about you know, like what's being left on the table, or what's possible if people do this. I think that, you know, when it comes to bringing things into the day-to-day life, as you've just touched on there, I've thought about this a little bit, and I think that sort of wellness practices, whether it's breath work, meditation, you know, take your pick. It's kind of been bolted onto health and fitness, I think. And the thing is with exercise, you know, if your goal is to get strong and you lift weights, and that's kind of what you have to do. Okay, you might work with a trainer or you have a specific program, but you do the thing and then you recover, and the body does its thing.
Adapts.
Yeah, and the same with cardiovascular health. You might say, okay, well, I'm going to go for a run. I have that hour when I'm running, and then, you know, my heart rate will adjust, and the body will just do its thing. I think that with breath work and with meditation, it's a bit different. We have to work to try and bring these things into our day-to-day life. Well, like you said, otherwise it's like just, okay, well, I have 20 minutes of Zen and then I'm just, you know, in crisis for the rest of the day. It's really just an escape. I might as well just be staring at Instagram for 20 minutes.
You make a really good point. I mean, if I can just jump in, you make a really good point around like cardiovascular health. And you go, I go out for a run and my body's going to adapt, and I'm going to get fitter. And we might, during the run, we might be thinking about our technique, and we might have a recovery shake afterwards, or you might do your warm up. But rarely do people, and this is because I come from a place I was never thinking about my breathing. I played professional rugby for 13 years, never once thought about my breathing during it, other than that when you're absolutely gassed and you feel like you're absolutely done, you know that breathing like that feels terrible. You know that feels terrible. And you also know visually, from body language perspective, if you see the opponent doing that, they're fucked. We know that intuitively. We know that. We know that that's part of the stress response. Remember, someone's lost their breath, lost control of their breath. They're too taxed. They're too fatigued. Yeah. When I go out for a run, if I have an awareness of my breathing, or just the concept of going out for a run and breathing really poorly, how does the body respond to that? Going out for a run and breathing well during that run. Like for me now, I run not to get better at running. I run to get better at breathing. When I run, your breathing gets heightened. It becomes more obvious. Your demand for oxygen goes up and your body starts creating more CO2. The faster you run, the more challenging it's going to be. So you can play with your tempo, you can play with your speed, and start to see how does your breathing respond. Because at rest, most people's breathing is you can't tell whether it's dysfunctional or not, because it's not being challenged. But as soon as it starts to get challenged, like those 91% of people that are from the athletic population having dysfunctional breathing, when you start to get challenged, your breathing, if your breathing at rest is dysfunctional, but you're not aware of it because it's so small you can't tell, when you start exercising, it doesn't get better. Your breathing just gets worse. Your dysfunction gets exposed. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting point, and something that's I don't know why, but something that's been overlooked in terms of like breathing performance. Yet we know that breathing is part of that cardiovascular system. We know that how breathing affects the heart rate, for example. Like we know that, and so having breathing awareness and understanding just the simple basics of what good efficient breathing looks like in terms of nasal breathing, managing airflow, diaphragmatic, low down, rib expansion, having those things in place and being able to maintain good breath and good control of your breath when you are being challenged through exercise gives you a what's a nice word I'm looking for? Gives you a robustness to your breathing that when it's challenged, you can still maintain control of it. So when that challenge comes from a different stress, so exercise is a stress. What about it when it comes from a mental stress? Or you go into the cold, or some other type of stress, particularly the mental ones are going like, I'm being stressed because of something. How does your breathing respond to then? And then you've got this tool to be able to stay in control of it. And the thing is, we all know that when we're stressed, we breathe faster. We know it's part of that response intuitively. We know that.
Or hold the breath. I work with
for sure.
Just to give an example of some of the people that I work with, and will probably be listening to this. everyone exercises these days, but you know, it's like a lot of people are trying to manage their performance in a professional environment where you said like lots of mental stress, perhaps
Yeah.
emotional stress, perhaps just kind of that social stress where you're in an environment where there's lots of people and perhaps you don't know many people. You're trying to make a good impression on people. And so what I'd love to get a little sense of before we dive into what good breathing looks like is like what's the possibility here, because we've touched a little bit on you know, some of the ideas around like what might be possible, but like in terms of optimal breathing, which we'll come on to specifically what that looks like, but what are the possibilities for people if they just take a few basic steps to try and breathe more effectively, and what's that going to look like in terms of managing stress response, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional?
As in what they can expect to see and sense what's on the other side of it for them if they.
Yeah. If someone said to me, "Why bother?" You know, like why should I even bother doing this?
Yeah. So on there's various different sort of levels to it. I don't know where to start, but let's sort of go in heavy. If you think of how your breathing influences your nervous system and your stress response, when you're breathing fast and you're breathing inefficiently, you have to breathe faster. You have to take more breaths because you're being inefficient with them, and that's more upregulating. It's more stressful for the nervous system. So you'll have more sympathetic dominance. What type of things do we get with sympathetic dominance of the nervous system? Well, we're going to get our decision making is going to be clouded. Is going to, because the stress response, like clouds or narrows things like our field of vision, but also our rational thinking. There's parts of the brain that govern that.
So we're talking about fight, flight, or freeze response. Where we're kind of going into that primal space. Have I got that right?
Yeah. And we're not talking about like I'm freaking out. It's like it can be just happening at a lower level, but it's affecting a little bit about how you think and how you perceive things. Potentially
judgment
things
goes
like,
a little bit off, maybe, you know, ability to communicate shuts down, maybe. Is this the sort of ground we're talking about? Yeah.
And then we've got things like just your ability to deal with stress, because you're already in a stressed state. And your breathing is something that's potentially like, it's a bit like chicken and egg, but it's like your breathing is part of the problem within that. But it's the one thing you can change and take control of. That inefficient breathing will also affect how well your body's utilizing oxygen. So when you're breathing faster, you're getting rid of more carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is really important within the body. There's a couple of vital roles to understand that are pretty simple to get your head around. One is that it's a vasodilator, so it helps with blood flow. When you breathe fast, people often have like cold hands and feet. They struggle with circulation, and that can be part of that can be down to how they're actually breathing. And then the other element that carbon dioxide does, as well as increasing blood flow, is increases oxygen delivery to the tissues. So it's deemed to be the catalyst that allows oxygen to be released from red blood cells. So if you think about like mental state, if I'm reducing my circulation, reducing my oxygen supply to tissues, like brain function can get clouded. So that like foggy or brain fog type of situation in the afternoon, for example, it might be that when someone improves the way that they breathe, they don't notice that so much. It's going to massively impact your physical performance because of how oxygen is being delivered to the tissues, for sure. And then in terms of, I'm just thinking some other things, breathing be related to heart rate. So when I breathe faster, my heart rate is going to go up. When I breathe slower, and particularly when I can extend my exhalations, we know that that helps to slow down the heart rate, and it's more parasympathetic promoting. The heart, your breathing and your heart rate are linked in together. With every inhale you take, the heart rate speeds up slightly. It's more sympathetic dominant. With every exhale you take, literally every breath, the heart rate slows down, is more parasympathetic promoting. So that can help us govern like states of recovery, states of down regulation, that can help us get into better states for more restorative sleep. It's almost the answer to someone going like, oh, what can breathing do? And I get it, because I was there, 5-6 years ago. I wasn't thinking about breathing at all. But the answer really is like, it's flip it on its head, like, what doesn't it influence? Because it's in the background. It literally is interweaved into everything from your heart rate, your stress response, your blood pressure, your hormone system. Like, it's linked into everything.
Yeah, and so what I'm hearing is that we've got this system going on within our body, which we all understand intuitively. Like when we're in a stressful situation, I'm thinking of people that I might be working with, and one of the things that comes up a lot is maybe someone's giving a big presentation or a big pitch, maybe they're going into an interview, and like right before, you almost feel like no matter how much preparation you've done, everything's gone out the window. It's like I can't access it, and obviously like when you get in there, you kind of get into your flow state. But when you start thinking about it, it's that stressed space where you almost don't feel like yourself, and that I think is a good example of that kind of like fight, flight, or freeze response, where your systems are sort of just shutting down a little bit, and the body's taking over. And guess what? We can't really have too much influence over our heart rate, but what I'm hearing is the breathing is the one thing we've got access to, and that we can regulate ourselves, which actually speaks to the rest of the body and the mind, as it were, and we can influence, and that communicates back that actually we can relax in this space. We can,
100%.
We can kind of use our mind to relax, and we are allowed to have access to our creative endeavors and our thoughts at this time. We don't need to kind of be in that fight, flight response. Have I got that right?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
You don't need me. You've got it. Like the one of the but things too simple. Like if people only listen to one thing or take away. If I say I've got like 2 minutes or 5 minutes with one person, like what am I going to give them? What am I going to say to them about their breathing that's going to help the most? And to help you regulate and help you stay in control of the breath, how you get it in is the most important thing in that respect. So you've got a couple of holes in your face. You can't breathe in through your eyes. You can't breathe in through your ears. It's either the nose or that big hole in the middle of your face, your mouth. Your nose is designed for breathing. Your mouth is designed for eating. There's 30 different functions of the nose that have been shown it's designed for breathing. You can go into those if you want to, but the takeaway message is if you close your mouth and breathe through your nose, it's already starting to change the signaling in terms of your breathing you're sending to the rest of the body. Mouth breathing is linked to more upper chest, shallower fight or flight response, faster breathing. There's the two small holes in your nose provide about 50% more resistance. That resistance helps to slow down your breathing. That's one way to help regulate it. When the mouth is wide open, there's no resistance, so it can be really fast. When it's fast, it's not low. It has to be high and shallow. That makes it inefficient in terms of oxygen delivery, because you've got the greatest density of alveoli low down within the lungs and the greatest amount of blood low down within the lungs because of gravity. So you then get stuck in that like inefficient breathing. So you then have to keep breathing more, and then you're wasting energy on breathing, but also you're sending a stressed response to the body. So if you shut the mouth and breathe through the nose, that's going to be one thing. And then the other simple thing is to be aware of the sound that the breath is making. Can you breathe quietly? If you're breathing quietly, you are breathing slowly. It's impossible to breathe slowly but make a noise as long as you breathe slow enough. It's that noise is created by vibrations, and it's the turbulence of fast breathing that creates a noise. So if you can hear your breathing, you can do something about it. If you notice your mouth breathing, you can do something about it. And if you just take away those two things, that's game changing for a lot of people that are not automatically doing those things. So that is how we should be set up automatically, but our breathing's been affected. I believe that the body knows how to breathe and knows how to breathe beautifully well. And my job when I'm working with people is just guiding them through and just taking away some of those restrictions that life has built up in terms of habits or just things that have potentially got in the way from them breathing really, really beautifully and really efficiently. And when we breathe more efficiently, you don't have to breathe as much. You don't have to breathe as fast. Each breath doesn't have to be as big. There's less work for your body to do. Your nervous system be calmer. You'll literally feel calmer because you're not doing as much of the thing that's keeping you alive. And the thing that's keeping you alive, you're doing it more efficiently and you're doing it better.
Great. So two big takeaways: breathe through the nose and breathe quiet, which is good. Well, breathing through the nose is going to help us breathe slowly and into the bottom of the chest, the diaphragm, which is what we want. And to try and breathe quietly where possible. So those are the two big things to try and focus on. And I suppose just thinking about it, there's two different ways to go about that. There's sort of trying to practice that as much as possible when you're doing whatever, if you're bored, instead of getting out your phone and looking at Facebook or Instagram, whatever, just checking with your breathing, why not? And also, like, if you're experiencing any kind of stress at work or at home or what have you, that would be a good point to check in and say, well, what's my breathing doing? Am I having a sort of stress response? And if so, can I shift back to that nasal breathing, that quiet breathing, to try and regulate the nervous system from the other end, and bring myself into a state of calm and relaxation where I've got access to hopefully more faculties. Is that a good sort of takeaway?
You've hit the nail on the head, because I'll give you like two things there, but the preceding thing, the preceding thing to those, to breathing through the nose and to breathe quietly, is awareness. The starting point of making change of anything in our life is awareness, and breathing's no different. The nice thing about breathing is, well, the nice thing about those two cues is they become an awareness tool for you. So when can I hear my breathing? Oh, I can hear it. That's you working on your awareness. When am I mouth breathing compared to nasal breathing? Oh, I notice myself mouth breathing. That's you building up your awareness. And when you have awareness of your breath, you're able to then do something different about it. And like you said, I'd almost take it one step further. Use a really good example of, like, rather than like going onto Instagram or whatever, why don't you just think about your breathing for a minute? But actually, you should be able to go on Instagram and think about your breathing. Like, it should be, this is where starting to integrate into anything that you do. And it doesn't need to be this breathwork practice I have to spend half an hour every day doing. You might do that as well, and you might enjoy doing that, might get lots of benefits out of that. And I'm not disputing that, but for the average man, girl, woman, lady, boy on the street, and aware of just your breathing and how does your breathing change in different scenarios, when I'm being physically stressed or mentally stressed, or just how does it change in different postures? How does it, be aware of that? And then when you're aware of it, then you can do something about it. No, it's beautiful.
Great, love that. And look, we've got like 10 minutes left. Have you got any time to do a little demo? Is that something we can do here and now? Is that
we've got,
how possible is that?
You're filming for YouTube, aren't you? So people, if they're just listening, maybe they want to get some visuals, they can go onto the YouTubes. FaceTube me up. Let's so the breathing through the nose and breathing quietly helps to slow down your breathing. When you slow down your breathing, it gives you a longer time differential, basically more time to take a breath. Now, the size of the breath is important as well. You want your size of your breath and the speed of your breathing, those two elements, the size of the breath and the speed of it, to match up with your metabolic demands. So if I'm sat here doing nothing, I don't want to be taking big breaths. I don't want to be taking fast breaths. I want to be taking small, gentle, slower breaths. But as I start exercising, I'm going to have to need to take a larger breath. The challenge with other stress, exercises of stress, there is a metabolic demand. When my stress is emotional, my breathing gets fast or gets bigger. I've not actually got any physical output. So I'm breathing beyond my metabolic demands, and that's then how we would define over breathing. But those two elements, the size of the breath and the speed of it, are important. When you make it quiet, you definitely make it slower. The size of it then needs to be regulated to the thing that you're doing.
So we should marry it up to our physical, output as opposed to kind of like mental output. Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah. And it will help you to gain mental clarity if you notice your breathing is going a little bit out of control of after. So if you think of, we want to mechanically, in terms of the mechanics, breathe well, what does that look like? I've got like 4 things that I can guide us through. But to set us up, it's easy to look at what's really inefficient breathing look like. So if someone's super stressed and breathing really poorly, if you're inefficient, you have to do a lot of them, it's going to look something like this. So you hear it for one, so you know it's fast. It was from the mouth. It was also like shallow upper chest, and it was vertical. So
sounds just like my French bulldog. I'll have to have a word with him when I get off of this.
But essentially, we just try and reverse all those things. So rather than it being fast and noisy, we make it slow and quiet. Rather than it being from the mouth, it's from the nose. Rather than it being from the upper chest, it's from lower down, where you talked about the diaphragm. And then rather than being vertical, it's more horizontal. And actually, we want it to be 3-dimensional. Okay. Now, there's some stuff going on around like the face, around your nose and your airway and your mouth. And then there's some stuff going on around the rib cage. They're the sort of like 2 halves of it. And what I love about all this stuff is it's not difficult. it's really simple, but really quite powerful. So if people just, first of all, just put one hand on the upper chest and one hand just below, in between your sternum and your belly button, okay? And just take a couple of breaths. I'm going to adjust my camera a little.
Got it.
A couple of breaths, and just notice which hand is moving. It's just a very simple awareness drill. Which hand is moving, and how does that airflow feel as it comes in? And even just now, like, are you breathing through the nose or the mouth? And then we'll address this top section, and then we'll address the bottom section. So as you're noticing the airflow, how easy or clear does the air feel as it coming in through the nose as it goes in through the back of the neck? And then what's your face like? Are you holding, a lot of time people will hold tension through their jaw, and they'll be clenching their teeth if they're a bit stressed. So if we talk about, there's going to be two bits. One, keeping the airflow clear, and then the second bit being tongue position, which actually goes into whole overall posture. If I'm slouched over in terms of posture, I restrict my rib movement. So I want to be sitting up a little bit tall, but I don't want you to be rigid with your posture. If you try and hold like a military posture, what tends to happen is you tense your abs, and then it's that tension through your stomach stops your rib cage from moving. And that's not a good thing. Okay, so we want to be upright so that we've got good spinal alignment effectively. Okay, but then as we breathe in through the nose, our mouth, our jaw, and our tongue posture is really important. So the mouth wants to be softly closed, the jaw's relaxed, but the teeth shouldn't be touching. Okay, that's quite a game changer. I did a session for a corporate client for a group earlier today, and there's a few people there with like just the awareness of just me saying that out loud to them and them checking. They were like, oh crikey, I'm clenching my teeth. And they were like, to just be cued to not clench their teeth was a game changer for them. Sometimes it's the simplest of things. Okay, so in that position, then the tongue is important. So we want the tongue, if the mouth is open, the tongue rests at the bottom of the mouth and actually restricts your airway. We want the tongue to the roof of the mouth, behind the front teeth. If you put the tip of your tongue where you make this noise, no, 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 no.
Got it, yeah.
Make that noise?
No.
So feel where your tip of your tongue is for that. No, 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 no. That's where you and then we also want the rest of the back of the tongue. So if you make this noise, la 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 la.
La 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 la.
And then this one, la 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 la.
La 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 la.
And then this one, whack 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 whack. I'm joking. I'm joking. So
that's my favorite one.
Out of that, the only one that's relevant is the first noise. I just can't resist doing that little. It's when you're guiding people through. It's not good actually, is it? But basically, when you're guiding people through these types of things, they'll do anything you say. Let's just prove that point. Don't do what anyone says. Like always question, like why. So the end noise.
How far can you take that? You know,
the end noise is what's important. So you put the tip of the tongue, behind the front teeth to the top of the mouth, yeah? And then I want you to put the rest of the tongue flat to the top of the palate. So the whole of your tongue is to the top of the palate behind the front teeth, okay? The mouth is closed, but the teeth aren't touching. So it's closed, but relaxed. Teeth aren't touching. Take a breath in now with the tongue in that position. And notice the airflow in through the nose and back through the back of the throat. For a lot of people, if they've had the mouth open or they've had their tongue resting at the bottom of the mouth, that again is a big game changer of just allowing freedom of flow of air through the nasal passage and the nasal cavity and down into the upper airways. Okay,
yeah, I can feel a big difference when I do that versus when, even if I've got my mouth closed, if I have the tongue up, it really sort of just changes. I can feel there's more air flowing almost, or it just feels different anyway.
Yeah. No, that's how it feels like the air's coming in easier. Yeah, because it literally will be. Their tongue position helps keep the airway open. It helps stabilize the neck. So then if we work a little bit lower down, then we're looking at the rib cage and the diaphragm. So there we have like nose. So I said 4 things. 1, nose. 2, tongue posture, and actually like your spinal posture comes into the whole of that posture. And then 3 and 4 is your diaphragm and your rib cage movement. Okay, so for your diaphragm, what I want you to do, the two are linked together because the diaphragm attaches on the front of the rib cage. I want you to find your lowest ribs on your body. Okay, you don't have to show them to me. I'm just showing you so people can see on the visual. Okay, if my stomach is relaxed and I'm not holding tension there, I can dig in and I can get my fingers underneath that rib. Okay. And so it's important to be able to keep the stomach relaxed, because that allows the ribs to move. If I tense my abs and show you my six pack, I can't get into those ribs because those ribs are being pulled down and in. Okay. So I want the stomach relaxed so I can get under there. And I can actually palpate and touch my diaphragm where it attaches onto the front of those ribs, or the front of the rib cage, underneath those ribs.
Oh, yeah.
It attaches on the spine at the back. And so literally just by palpating that a tad, and then if you just have a little fear and then you just let go, just notice that area you were prodding on. Just by touching, you've got a lot of sensory receptors in the skin, in those tissues.
Yeah.
By touching it, if you take a breath in now, feel that area be the thing that expands.
Yeah. I feel like I've never touched that part of my body
a
before.
lot of people
it feels
are
unusual.
Like, it's like, no, relax the stomach. You should be like any muscle. You know, if like someone's been on a big run and their calves are tight, and you touch them, it's like, oh, it feels horrible. It's like, if your diaphragm's been not working well, like touching it and giving it some love can feel a little bit weird at first.
Yeah.
But by touching it, then you take a couple of breaths in now, you're like, okay, I can feel that. I can feel that area a little bit more. I'm heightening my awareness of it.
Yeah.
The other one for the diaphragm that I really like is a blocked inhalation. This is how we get the diaphragm to feel a contraction. The diaphragm contracts on an inhalation. Okay, so when you inhale, it contracts and actually it moves down and flattens out. So those ribs are coming up on that angle. It forms this like dome shape as it attached on the front of them. As you breathe in, it's going to should pull down and flatten out if you're not upper chest breathing. Okay. Now we can feel if I said like contract your diaphragm, how does it feel to contract the diaphragm? We don't know what that feels like. If you take a normal breath in, so I'm going to look, if you just watch me here, I'm going to put my hand in between where those two ribs meet, where that diaphragm is. I do a normal breath in, normal breath out, which is quiet and gentle. Pinch the nose, then try and breathe in, but trap the air. You see, it tries to pulse out because it wants to pull down and flatten out. I'm trapping the air so it can't move. You feel it like tugging in there.
Yeah.
That's your diaphragm contraction. That's you activating your diaphragm. So if you do a couple of those, connect to it. It's inside. It's quite deep inside. It feels a bit weird. But then
I can feel it deep in there moving.
Nice. Good. So then relax. Just log that in your brain as a sensation you could feel. And then with that nice tongue posture, that nice spinal posture, breathing in and out through the nose, just connect to that feeling from the diaphragm. Yeah. And you should be able to feel there's a heightened awareness of, okay, that's pulling down and flattening out. That's what's pulling the air in. I'm not sucking the air in from my face. Okay. The final thing then, the fourth thing is with the ribs. So getting the rib cage to move. The ribs are supposed to widen as the diaphragm flattens out. That's the ribs moving help facilitate the space for the diaphragm. So what can be nice is you take your hands, and rather than that chest being like high up and vertical, we want it to be more horizontal. So what I want you to do is actually like wake up the skin around the outside of your ribs. Okay, so we rub on the outsides. We're thinking about when we're going to do this, we're going to think about expansion coming out here. Okay, but your ribs also go all the way around your back into your spine. So get your fingers rubbing around to the back of the spine, and then finish by doing a few nice loops all the way around those lower portions of those ribs where that diaphragm is. Okay, because we want to be breathing ultimately, yes, laterally, but we want to be breathing three-dimensionally. Now that touch and sensation wakes up that skin. When you let go now, just feel that skin like sort of like feel it be buzzing, like it feels like it's alive, it's awake. Okay. Now when you breathe in, feel that air expand outward in all directions. And when you exhale,
it does. It starts to release the muscles, and they're just they're moving outwards now. Yeah,
we're probably not releasing anything. All we're doing is helping map for your brain where that area of your body is. Our proprioception of the trunk is typically very poor for just human beings. Okay. Final, if you take your hands then and just put them on the outside of those ribs and just gently push in. Try to make sure the shoulders stay relaxed. If you feel your shoulders shrugging up, just gently push your elbows down. That helps to drop the shoulder. Okay, just gently push the elbow down. But the emphasis being on putting a little bit of pressure inwards from my hands on the outside of the ribs. So I've got to feel like I can push them out. So I take a breath in, the diaphragm moves down. My hands widen, I can feel my ribs pushing them out. And then when I breathe out, I let the ribs come back together. And just that can be as a simple thing of just checking in with those 4 points. So the nose, the posture and tongue position, and then feeling that, locating the diaphragm, then feeling it in terms of a contraction, and then getting that feeling of those ribs moving. If you now put one hand high and one hand low like before, and have all those things, so nice long spine but not rigid, tongue to the roof of the mouth, air is just entering gently in and out of the nose, but it's the diaphragm moving down and the ribs moving out on that inhale, and you're going to feel that bottom hand moving. Hopefully it feels, the airflow feels freer, it just feels more gentle, it feels easier. You're practicing the mechanics thereof, good efficient breathing.
Great, that's really helpful. And I suppose, kind of like you said, it's just creating that awareness, which over time is going to help us just to be more proactive in terms of managing how we're breathing, both in stress response situations and just normal day to day, so that we can train ourselves to do that type of breathing without even really thinking about it, which is just going to shift the way we're showing up generally if we're in that more relaxed state.
Yeah, no, totally.
Great, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Like really helpful information there, Jacko. Love that. It's been so wonderful.
No, thanks so much for having me on, listening to me bang on about breathing, and sharing a little bit of what we're learning. Hopefully it helps people out there.
And great, look, if you want to share with everyone where they can find you, and I know you're doing a crazy run in a few days' time, if you want to share us a little bit of information about that, if you're doing any sponsorship that people can tap into for you, just let us know. I'm sure there'll be loads of people wanting to follow you and sign up for your information wherever they can.
Yeah, no, thanks. Probably the best place you can find everything on my Instagram. So my Instagram's jacko.david.jackson. There's links in my profile. There's links to the Just Giving page, which is for Petals charity. It explains a bit about the charity, but also about the Ring of Fire is the ultra marathon that I'm doing. It's 216 kilometers in 3 days round Anglesey in North Wales. But I'm as equally scared as I am excited about that. Starts on Friday, and we're creating a little bit of we're documenting it and creating a little bit of a short film off the back of it, which will be released later this autumn. But you can follow the action Friday through to Sunday this coming week. Well, it depends when you put this out, but it's the 2nd to the 4th of September. I don't know how soon you'll get.
I'll make a point of getting this out on Thursdays, so people have got a bit of time to log on and check that out. Yeah. I'll tag you in all of the posts and stuff. Most people come to it from Instagram, but that sounds great. Best of luck with the run. I always really admire people doing things that kind of stretch the boundaries of what's possible for themselves. It really inspires me, and particularly when you're doing it for a great cause like you are. And sending you all the love and strength and energy and breath, actually, that you that's going to power you over the finish line. And I wish you all the best. Appreciate your time, love your work, and I promise to stay connected to what you're doing and keep learning, keep breathing.
Yeah, no, definitely. And maybe come back on at a later date to let you know what I learned about how horrendous running that distance is and how my breathing managed to help me through it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the how you can use your breath work to help get you through that. I'm sure that's been a big part of your training, and we'd love to do this again.
Cool. Thanks, mate.
All right, take care. Bye.